My name's Amber. I'm a body piercer in Charleston, West Virginia, and I also happen to have a deep love of dystopian fiction and a minor degree in English literature from the University of Tennessee. In the year 2026, with the world the way it is, especially from my perspective here in the US, it seems like a really good time for us to take a look at what these authors were trying to tell us and see if there's anything we can learn from it. I want this to be equal parts book club, social commentary, and maybe help find a sense of community, because I don't know about everybody else, but I'm starting to feel like the frog in the pot that's about to boil over and I have no control over the situation. If you want to read along, I'd love to have you, and if you already know something about Dystopia and I missed something, please leave me a comment below. I'd love to get a conversation started. We're going to start by talking about what Dystopia actually is before we get into our first work. So if you want to come along for the ride, let's go. Now, I'm not a professional and I get distracted easily, so I have notes to keep us on topic, so don't judge me if I have to use them. What dystopia actually is a subgenre of speculative fiction. That's the same genre that houses sci-fi, cyberpunk, post-apocalyptic fiction, and dystopia is often characterized by fear, totalitarianism, dehumanization, with often underlying concerns about technology and ecological decay. It serves as a cautionary tale about political, societal, and technological trends, and sometimes the authors have been called prophetic, but that's not what they are at all. It's them commenting on what they were already seeing in their time and using an imaginary future to critique it. Now, we can't talk about dystopia without first talking about utopia, which is the other side of the coin. The word utopia first came around in 1516 when Thomas More used it as the title of his novel. And what he did was take the Greek word utopos, meaning good place, and utopos, meaning no place, combined them together into the title of his novel. And it referred to a perfect, idealized society, which we all know doesn't exist, and was serving as satirical social commentary. And while the word itself didn't exist until then, there are themes of utopia as far back as Plato's Republic. Dystopia has its origins in late 19th and early 20th century literature as a counterpoint to utopia. And the word dystopia itself was first coined in 1868 by John Stuart Mills in a speech that he gave at the British House of Commons to critique government policy. He used it as a means of describing a bad place or a policy too bad to be practical, and basically just the inverse of utopia. Now, it could be argued that the 1726 Jonathan Swift novel called Gulliver's Travels could be considered dystopian, even though it's normally lumped in with utopia, but it's a fictional travel log that documents voyages to 4 perfect utopian societies and uses satire to highlight the profound flaws and corruption and weakness in the system, and describes how perfect utopia is unattainable to humans. So I would probably personally lump that in with dystopia. Some early proto-dystopian works would probably be the 1895 novel The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, or Jack London's 1908 novel The Iron Heel. But the first modern dystopian work was probably the 1924 novel We by Yevgeny Zamyatin, and it's a Soviet-Russian novel that is based on the author's own experiences of Soviet censorship and the Russian Civil War and his professional background as a naval engineer. And it takes the modern industrial society to a very extreme conclusion where scientific management principles treat human labor with industrial efficiency. It features a totalitarian one state where humans live in glass buildings and they are identified by numbers instead of names. Their lives are dictated by a benefactor, and it treats free will as the cause of unhappiness. It has all of the characteristics of suppression of individuality, the price of freedom, and the cost of, reason versus emotion baked in. And it is worth noting that while it was published in English in 1924, it was not published in Soviet Russia until 1988. Now we're moving into the post-war expansion dystopias, which emerged from the psychological trauma and societal shift following the major military conflicts of the world wars, where broken societies are rebuilt under oppressive and authoritarian systems. And these are the titles that everyone knows. Even if they are generally unaware of dystopia as a genre, Everybody knows these, and we're talking 1932's Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, or Orwell's 1984, which was published in 1949, and then we have Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, which was published in 1953. And these feature the totalitarian control, surveillance, technological domination, where technology is portrayed as a tool of suppression rather than growth or progress. These also tend to feature the idea of restricting knowledge to suppress the people. The late 20th century saw the introduction of dystopia into the YA genre with Lois Lowry's 1994 novel The Giver and Gathering Blue. And these still focused on conformity and security versus freedom, but also introduced the importance of emotion in a world where feelings are muted by medications. It's a coming-of-age novel that echoes Moore's lessons about how a life without pain isn't truly living. In 2008, Suzanne Collins' Hunger Games hit the scene, and we saw a massive boom of dystopia within the YA genre. And this was a complete departure from tradition in that YA tended to lean more towards the uplifting tales and left the heavier, darker stuff for an older, more jaded audience. As someone who turned 18 the year this one was published, I can say that this probably resonated because of our growing concerns about a climate crisis and our access to a 24-hour news cycle for the first time where we could see the injustices of the world in real time. When you're reading about kids being forced to kill other kids as a means of entertainment and control by the capital, you can see how that might resonate. And it also perpetuated the fears of scientific and technological advancement. It strongly featured themes of survival and resource scarcity, environmental decay, and catastrophic societal collapse. Unlike 20th century dystopias, contemporary dystopias are highlighting digital capitalism and economic disparity while keeping the themes of loss of individuality and totalitarian control. Narratives in contemporary dystopia are now focusing on digital tracking and AI, climate crisis, political polarization and authoritarian shifts, while also intersecting with corporate power and technology as a source of oppression. Overall, the popularity of dystopia is speaking to growing anxieties in regards to technology, politics, and environmental collapse, while giving us a space to explore the extreme scenarios. Dystopia serves as a mirror and a warning by exaggerating current political, technological, and societal trends. And in a 2020 interview, Margaret Atwood described dystopia as a blueprint for the house we might end up with if we keep going down this road. And in the case of the first book we're going to be reading, she even said she didn't use any technology that didn't exist at the time she wrote it in 2004. So this has been my crash course on dystopia for you. And while dystopia and post-apocalyptic often go hand in hand, not all post-apocalyptic fiction is dystopian, and not all dystopian fiction is post-apocalyptic, though this first book does happen to be both. While I know I should start at the beginning of this long list that I've given you, because I'm told the beginning is a very good place to start, we've also already addressed that I'm not a professional, so I'm going to start with what I know and love best, and that happens to be the Mad Addam trilogy by Margaret Atwood. The first book is called Oryx and Crake, but I left my copy in a hotel last week while taking notes for this series here, so you get to see the series title rather than the first book. I apologize. We are going to be taking it chapter by chapter and then discussing it, and then once we've read the whole book, we can do the entire book breakdown and really get in there and analyze. I would love for us to be able to do the analyzing first so that we could read a little more closely in our chapter by chapter, but it's such a good book that I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't already read it. So we'll be doing the chapter by chapter thing. If I have missed something in this crash course and you think it's important, leave me a comment, let me know, let's talk about it. I'm hoping you're going to want to read along because I think this is important to talk about right now with everything going on in the world. And I do want a little bit of book club and a little bit of community building because, let's face it, it's hard to watch the world burn by yourself.